So please welcome on stage, from left to right, Stefan, Markus, Lars, and Anian. Big applause, please. Yeah, let's start with the first question. We had it a bit in your talk, Markus, like which type of projects are too big, too complex for EDS?
So far, I would say we have not seen them. So bring them on and show them to us, I would say, as easy as that. So basically we have seen it in the Adobe.com presentation as well. We have projects with millions of pages, different content sources, hundreds of authors. So we have not seen the limits yet, I would say.
Yeah, I would say challenge accepted.
Yeah. And Adobe.com is the biggest edge delivery page right now. I don't think that's going to stay that way until the end of the year. And whoever is going to be the biggest one, I'm really hoping that somebody here in the audience is going to kick them off their throne and deliver a bigger one.
Okay, then we say challenge accepted.
Yeah.
There's always like the topic all around like the frameworks. It's plain vanilla JavaScript, especially like the front-end guys that love to use like the React and stuff like that. What's the outlook on that technology-wise?
I think, our position regarding legacy frameworks has always been, you're welcome to bring them. Please mind the performance and know that there's a massive performance tax that you are putting on your users when you bring in legacy frameworks like React, like Angular, and so on. And in terms of the long-term outlook, I don't see us doing anything to make it easier for you to hurt your visitors with these frameworks. But at the same time, I see the entire ecosystem obviously shifting to a way where a lot of the functionality that you use these frameworks for is essentially being absorbed by the browsers themselves. Right? So we've seen, 5 years ago, we made the relatively controversial decision not to use bundlers, right? Because we said, you probably don't need them. And with HTTP 2 and HTTP 3, you actually don't need them, especially if you're writing terse code, right? That isn't pulling in every single dependency that you can find on NPM.js. And the same is true for instance, for components. We've been using web components, custom elements quite successfully, also for complex applications. So I'm very confident that even those who think, well, I can't live without my framework, are going to see the light in a couple of years and going to say, well, you know what, I can live without React just the same way I can live fine without jQuery, and I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah, and maybe some small additions. So if you really have one super complex fragment, like a super complex form or like a configurator or something like that, you could use a Preact, which doesn't require a bundler. I mean, it maybe also be a controversial opinion, but we use it for some smaller fragments, and it works quite well because, first of all, you don't need a bundler, and you can build quite complex things with Preact. So it maybe is a nice in-between between compiled, transpiled framework like React and having nothing at all. But again, be careful in the ways you use it.
And I think an important distinction is how much time are your visitors going to spend with that particular experience. Right? If they spend more than 10 minutes, which is for a car configurator or private plane configurator or bicycle configurator, is a reasonable time to spend. But absolutely bring in your framework, right? Because the initial load time tax that you are imposing on your visitors, which can be 2,000 milliseconds, right, is being paid off over the time of these 10 minutes engagement. However, if you have a landing page, if you have a page that is built to acquire traffic, keep all of that stuff out there, right? Because every single kilobyte that you're adding is increasing your bounce rate, is increasing your LCP, and is basically offsetting all of the benefits, all of the imaginary benefits that this framework could bring to you.
After convincing our customers that EDS is going to be the future and this is the way to go, there's like the tricky question, which road to take. We have like document-based editing, we have Crosswalk, Universal Editor, Dark Alley is also in the room. Maybe to Anian and Stefan, how do you support the customer taking the right decision?
Yeah, so my opinion is don't just go the AM route first right away without thinking about anything. Nothing against AM, but really think about the use case of the customer. So for most probably smaller mid projects, really document-based would be a good option. Dark Alley maybe as well, but let's see what the future brings about this. And only really have a real need, and not only because the boss says VisiBack is fun. Really use case for other AM functions like the MSM functions, or you need workflows, or you need anything about, then AM is a good route. But Edge Delivery Services has a very, the nice thing about this, you can really get very fast to a goal and publish things. And if you bring in AM, it has much more powerful, has much features, but also lessens a bit this lean approach. So it gets more complicated. You have all those model definitions. Development gets more complicated also for the developers. So do it if you have a good reason for doing it, but check out the other options really as well.
Yeah. So what we found is if we go to a customer and say to them, hey, there's document-based authoring, is this something for you? Almost all of them say, what is this? Documents, I can't edit my content in documents. And then we demo it to them. We maybe build a small prototype, which is super easy and very, very quick. And then we explain it to them. Okay, hey, look here, this is the concept. This is how you could edit your content in the future. And then most of the customer understand the benefit of it as well. Of course, not all, and that's fine. It's for sure not the only route to take. But that's something we found out is very helpful to build a prototype and to actually show a real-world example to the customers how it works.
Yeah. I would add to this, right? So document-based authoring, right? Using Google Docs for authoring is clearly the unreasonable choice, right? And I'm the first one to admit that when we first built this, I thought, this is insane. Nobody is ever going to use this. You can't be serious. And but the reality is that it is incredibly powerful, and a big part of this power is coming from the fact that your authors are already trained on Word or on Google Docs, right? So you're in a case where familiarity beats configurability 9 out of 10 times, right? And a second point is when it comes to making the decision, bring the authors into the room, right? Because if and again, depending on your scenario, if you are if you're in a shop that has been using AEM for years, right? Obviously, you have authors that are trained on AEM, right? But if you're winning a new customer, it's very likely that nobody ever has seen AEM, right? That the experiences that they had with content management systems are representative of the experiences that we all have, which is super complicated, lots of forms, a lot of stuff to learn. You rather stay away from it, right? And then giving them the option of saying, you can use the Word document that you're writing anyway, and you can click publish, is a breath of fresh air. And showing this to the authors is a real powerful move. It's obviously something that is not often done, right? Because in a lot of cases you're making these decisions with executives in the room and with developers in the room, and keep the authors out of the decision-making process. Don't make that mistake. Show it to them, and then let them make an informed decision.
And to add on that, from the project we did so far, even for large classic AEM customers, we have seen if you ask them, hey, how is your publishing process working today? What's your workflow? you very often see, even for large scale organizations, they prepare everything in Word, send the Word file back and forth or manage it on SharePoint. And then there's the poor guy or the poor lady, which we call the webmaster, who is finally copy and pasting stuff from the Word prepared by the business team to the AM offering and polish it for the website. Yeah. And you can make this process for everyone in this workflow way easier by giving them direct publishing from documents.
Yeah.
Michael and many others would like to know, can we use Markdown directly instead of Word documents because they're transformed to Markdown anyway?
You can, sort of. And we at Adobe.com actually do this. So a large side of Adobe.com is the Adobe Experience League. It has all the product documentation for all the DX products, and this content is actually managed in Markdown, in GitHub. And the authors creating them, writing Markdown, there's a mix. They use Crosswork actually, because they have a more marketing-ish and more event sites there as well. They are maintained in AM Author, but the majority, and this is 200K of pages, are all written in Markdown, translated in Markdown with their own custom workflows into all the different languages, and they are published directly from GitHub. That's possible.
So what Markus is calling crosswalk, I'm calling bring your own markup.
Yep.
And the idea is that we have the ability to ingest the same HTML that we render out as a content source, right? So as long as you have something that is able to generate HTML, and we found that Markdown is fantastic, right? We're using it internally, but there are so many flavors, and we only speak one. Right. For HTML, it's much more simple because almost every framework that is able to deal with Markdown is able to generate HTML. So you can produce you can write the Markdown the way you like it, produce the HTML the way we like it, give it to us, we turn it into the Markdown that we like, store it in the content bus, and when a visitor comes along, we turn it again into HTML and deliver it. And if you're saying, well, all of this sounds super complicated, you're right. You can also use Google Docs, where you can edit Markdown directly in the way that Google likes it, and it's turned into a document transparently. So either use Google Docs or use bring your own markup. But Markdown is an option. It's obviously one that is primarily picked by developers and people who have prior experience with Markdown.
A big cluster of topics, like several questions here are all around what's happening with classic AM as a cloud service, or even like AM on-prem. Yeah. What's the future of like this stuff? Because EDS is everywhere and Adobe is pushing hard. Yeah.
Okay, so let me start with AM on-premise. Right? And let me start with the history lesson. When I joined Day Software in 2007, we still had live customers running on Open Web 2.0, and Open Web 2.0 is the predecessor to CQ, right? It's basically CQ, AM, or CQ is AEM before it was called AEM. Open Web is CQ before it was called CQ. This is ancient software. We kept it running as long as our customers were, on the one hand, willing to run it, and willing to pay us yearly maintenance fee, right? And Adobe is a business that likes money, so as long as we have customers willing to run this, and as long as they're willing to pay for support, we are going to support this, right? At the same time, there are incredible benefits of moving to the cloud, right? And one of the biggest benefit, and here I'm talking really about cloud service, AM cloud service without edge delivery services, right, is that this is all of the power and all of the customizability that AM ever has to offer in one service that you don't have to worry about at night, right? And that is also something that is useful for us when we are building edge delivery services, right? Because edge delivery services deliberately is a product that is smaller in scope than AM as a cloud service. But on the one hand, we are saying, sure, we want to tackle the most trafficked websites. We want to tackle the hardest and most complex use cases. But we are doing this in a way that is highly opinionated and that is streamlined to a particular solution. If you want to stray off that beaten, or if you want to stray off that that paved path, then it's fantastic to have AEM cloud service without edge delivery services as an option, right? That gives you the ability to use it as a full Java development platform where you can do everything.
Makes sense. Jesse would like to know, and many others, why should a customer choose an expensive system like Edge Delivery Services compared to modern headless system where you can use, again, the modern frameworks?
Right. So, you should pick it for the same reason that you're picking Edge Delivery Services in the first place. Right? First reason is it's giving you the fastest websites possible. And this is something that Edge Delivery Services ruthlessly prioritizes over everything else. When you look at most headless systems, what they prioritize first is developer experience, right? And I know that we have a lot of developers here in the room, but we have even more visitors to our sites out there, right? So if you agree with our prioritization that performance is the most important thing, then pick a system that is performance first and not a system that is developer experience first. Number two is your authoring experience and the authoring speed, right? And we've been talking about the power of familiarity, right? Which is something that you can only get out of Edge Delivery Services with document-based authoring, and the power of AEM authoring and the flexibility and customizability that Crosswalk gives you, right, is again something, right, and especially with the ability to have rich previews, to have what you see is what you get authoring that is an honest representation of what the visitor experience will look like instead of just an endless avalanche of forms. Right? And the last one is, and now I'm coming back to developers, right? The development speed that you can achieve with Edge Delivery Services. And of course, if you've been building applications with your favorite framework and your favorite headless backend for years, there's going to be a learning curve, right? But if you are in a world where you're dealing with multiple frameworks, multiple backends, take a good look at Edge Delivery Services. It's easy to get into, it's easy to get started, and there's no limit to the power that you can deliver sites with.
As advocate of the developers, let's keep a bit the developer experience. Yep. What's your thoughts about that besides the speed?
So there are a couple of things that, from a developer experience, that set Edge Delivery or our approach apart. And where I would, in all humility, would say it's way superior. Right? Reason number one is that the amount of tooling that you need, that is required, is much, much smaller. Right? You basically need the AEM command line in order to run AEM up and see your live preview, which you get with a lot of other tools. Right? But for us, it's very opinionated. You have one tool that does it. And you have, by shrinking the stack of dependencies, you are shrinking the risk that you get this kind of bit rot that you often experience with NPM projects. Right? If you don't update them every week, every month, you might end up in a situation where you revisit a project 6 months later, and five of your 17 dependencies are outdated, deprecated, and now you have to spend time upgrading it. This doesn't happen with Edge Delivery Services. Right? On top of that, because the code that you're writing is the code that is being delivered to your visitors, debugging in the browser is really, really simple, right? Because you are not getting into a situation where you think, well, I hope I got my source maps configured in the right way. I hope my transpiler didn't mess up. I hope my TypeScript compiler didn't mess up. I hope my minifier didn't mess up. But instead, it's very, very clear. Right? The stuff that you write is the stuff that your visitors see in the browser. And if you have an exception in line 117, then you're going to open Visual Studio Code in line 117 and catch the exception and fix it.
All right.
Also, keep in mind the onboarding cost of developers. So the stack is very, very simple. It's plain JavaScript and plain CSS. So there's almost no additional knowledge required to start developing with Edge delivery services. So you can develop a new you can onboard a new developer in like a day or something like that. Whereas if you see how long it takes to be a sufficiently good AEM developer, it's a whole different story. So that's also some things to keep in mind, that onboarding costs money, and that's also an argument for Edge delivery services.
Okay, I stick on that but it also made us to unicorns in here, to be honest. Like the whole complex AEM stack with Sling, Jackrabbit, Oak. Not everybody can manage that perfectly. And now I'm a bit like provocative. Every junior front-end developer comes, GitHub, copy boilerplate, and get started. What's happening to us here?
So there's a very easy answer to this, right? If you like new stuff and if you like learning and developing in your career, we've got new stuff and we've got things that you can develop into. Right? If you like to do OSGI development right now and being deep down in the AEM stack, then you will be able to end your career doing exactly that. Right? So the choice is entirely yours, right? Do you want to dig down and do the same thing that you do until you retire, or do you want to learn new stuff? And I've been talking about how long we've been supporting Open Web, how long we've been supporting CQ3, which was the CQ before we moved to a JCR backend, right? How long we've been supporting CQ4, which was before we introduced Sling, how long we've supported CQ5, and so on, right? So absolutely, you can find these customers, you can apply there, become a lead engineer, and advocate against change ever happening, right? Or you can move along and say, you know what, Adobe is delivering cool new stuff, right? Whether it's around edge compute, whether it's around Gen AI, whether it's around front-end development, and you can learn and try that new stuff.
Also, there are still hard problems to solve with Edge delivery services where you need experienced developers. Not every junior developer can, for example, like we saw before, can solve an authentication gated resources like that. So there's still the need for highly skilled developers also in the Edge delivery services space.
Stefan, how was your change from as you migrated adaptTo website 1.5 years ago to go front end?
Yeah, well, I had my talk last year about exactly this experience. So for me, it was very refreshing, yes, because a lot of stuff which was of course able to do in AM was possible quite easier with Edge delivery service to do, but not everything. The problem is, if you have done AM for 10 years, you have patterns in your mind how you do it perfectly in Sling and AM. And those patterns will not work the same in Edge delivery service. We really have to rethink about the use cases and find new patterns. And this finding of new patterns is, of course, also a thing where you need experienced developers, because not all new patterns are good patterns. You really need to find the best patterns to solve the problems. You know how to solve them with Sling and AM, and probably a lot of development effort in Edge delivery service, and hopefully in a more elegant and more easier way. And another thing, what makes complex, big projects complex? Most time it's the integrations. In the past, 10 years ago, a lot of integrations were server-side integrations, probably longer ago. But this does not really scale well. You do not want to integrate a commerce system on the server side or so. It's really not a good solution. So already on AEM, a lot of integrations were done on the client side with CRM systems, shopping systems, and so on. And Edge delivery services is going full in this direction, doing everything on the client side, which is custom logic, and treating the backend only as a smart and super fast content delivery platform. And all your customizations you are doing is happening in the client side. And of course, this needs different set of skill sets. You are doing a lot more JavaScript and TypeScript than other programming, but it's still the same problems to solve in a new and hopefully better way. Yeah.
And I would like to add to this. Stefan's experience also shows the value of experience and having seen some shit, I think. So, and Stefan started with Edge delivery services about 2 years ago, right? Before, when we were basically hand-holding customers and saying, you know what, we are going to run the VIP project for you and your developers can look. And what we did for Stefan was basically set up the Slack channel. Stefan didn't write anything in the Slack channel for 2 weeks, then came back with a list of 10 very, very smart, very, very intelligent, pointed questions that were going to the crux of the issue. We had very short discussions on about 5 of them, slightly longer discussions on another 4, really long discussion on one of these, and then the adaptTo website was live, right? So that's obviously the power of an engineer who has seen a lot of different systems, a lot of different patterns, and who is able to adopt these new things, right? And on top of that, as Stefan said, right, not all new patterns are good patterns. Not all old patterns are bad patterns. But you have to adapt yourself to the new realities.
We're going to switch context now, and Konrad would like to know why you, like him and probably Adobe, you don't put the same effort to speed and Lighthouse core for your AEM core components.
We do. The thing is, it's just much harder to achieve, right? So one of the things that we found is that there's no single silver bullet to performance. Right? When we started this journey with Helix, we really wanted to. Right? We knew that there was this 100 which was achievable, but we didn't exactly know how to achieve it. Right? And we tried basically every single technique in the book. Right? And we found out that no, it's not enough to optimize stuff on the HTTP layer. Right? You can upgrade from HTTP 1.1 to HTTP 2 or 3. And yes, you can use server push, or at least you could use server push when we did that. It has been discontinued since then. Right? Now you can use early hints. You can use image compression. But all of that is not going to help you if the DOM that you're delivering is too heavy, right? And even delivering a small DOM to the client is not going to help you if you have a heavyweight web framework. And even having a lightweight web framework is not going to help you if you're loading tens of megabytes of MarTech into your page, right? And even loading just 500 kilobytes of MarTech onto your page is not going to do you any good if these 500 kilobytes of MarTech are going to make requests to 7 different backends, right? So it took a full stack re-engineering of what we did in order to achieve this kind of performance. And I wish it was the other way around, right? Because then we would have a much easier time, because we could simply say, you know what, your existing site is now fast. Unfortunately, that's not possible, and that's where we have to do this technology transition.
Yeah, like we jump a bit back where we talked about the different options you have for like content editing, and it's about the document-based authoring, especially when you're like, now you have to train like how to use the word authoring, you have to give them guidelines and so on and so on. And the point is a bit like pretty fast you're switching back to Universal Editor. We also had this advantage, a customer, we showed the option, we did POC, and then they chose Universal Editor. So is document-based authoring a real advantage for authors?
From what I can see, yes, absolutely. Right. And Markus can probably speak better about this, but we've seen a couple of projects switch from document authoring to crosswalk.
Yep.
I don't know if we've seen many that switched back from crosswalk.
I see one switching back as well.
Okay.
So we have seen in real life, we've seen both ways, people switching. I think the biggest question or challenge for you is figuring out what works best for your authors. Always put yourself in the shoes of the authors, and if they have a workflow which works perfectly for them, and it's lightweight, like I had in my talk, just write a Word document, push it out, then document-based is the thing to go. And if they have totally different workflows already today, and in big, large organization, changing these workflows is maybe way more complicated than implementing anything on a technical side, because there are different orgs involved, different processes established, you cannot change them that easily. And for these kind of setup, it makes sense to go with universal editor, and they don't like document-based, go for it. It's really giving the user which works with the tool day to day the best tool for their process. That's what it is about.
All right, there's a wish in here, like that we get like a poll. So it's less for you, it's like for here from the audience. How many of you out there are not classic AEM developers? So you're like, but you already implemented stuff with EDS. Can you raise your hand? Okay, it's not that many. So we answered that. And timing-wise, we have time for like a last question, but it's probably a bit big topic. It's dynamic content in EDS. So we talked a lot about static. So is it possible to create pages in EDS with dynamic content which will be taken from outside services, like kind of an enterprise service bus?
Yes, it is. So, and this goes back to the bring your own markdown, bring your own markup topic what Lars explained earlier. We typically do this, for example, in e-commerce setups, that you have your products and you want to create product pages, and you have thousands of product pages. Typically, if you're a retailer, nobody wants to touch them, manually create them. And you also, for SEO reasons, for performance reasons, maybe you have good reasons to render them server side. And we have the option that you have put your API, convert it into HTML, which is suitable for our API. Basically, bring your own markup, bring your own API, and you can push it dynamically as often as you want. And if many customers do this, so they publish automatically product pages every time something in the PIM has changed, they get an event, and immediately the product page is automatically updated and dynamically regenerated.
So for dynamic content that is the same for everyone, that's the right approach. For dynamic content that is different for every visitor, do this on the client side. With extra bonus points if you pipe it through your existing CDN, right, so that it's not requiring a second DNS request, a second TLS handshake. And if you can't do that, load it delayed. Right. So for instance, using an intersection observer so that it's not becoming LCP blocking.
All right. Unfortunately, time is up. I would say that's a tremendous applause for Stefan, Markus, Lars, and Anian.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great to have you all on stage.